Welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. I'm here with my man Rob from the YouTube channel Adeptus Psychonautica. Rob, thanks so much for joining me, my man.
Cheers, thanks. Thanks for having me on, mate. So it's nice to talk to you.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. Psychedelics is one of my favorite subjects, and the reason I wanted to get you on the show, you talk about it in such like a rational way, and you look at psychedelics, I think, in the same way I do, as like almost as a tool to better yourself. Is that a proper way you would say I put it right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. I think the way when I started the YouTube channel, the way I came at it was that I wanted to make information for people like me, so that there's plenty of stuff out there which will give you the complete hippie perspective on things, where people are talking about rainbows and unicorns and all these kind of wacky theories, and then there's the very sort of hardcore dry science. But what I kind of really wanted is just like what's kind of the useful information for the everyday person, like particularly when you're talking about some of these things where you go on like retreat to somewhere like Peru, like which of these places is good, which is bad, which of these substances is useful, and which is just kind of like going into woo-woo territory. So that's what I was doing. I just wanted to make this kind of yeah, just simple everyday information, and that's the perspective I come at it from. It's not that I'm sort of opposed to the hard science or opposed to the sort of more kind of transcendent fluffy ideas. I think both those things are very interesting, but I'm just trying to put my own sort of normal everyday frame on it. I think that's where I come at it from.
Yeah, I think I'm in a very similar territory because I love the hard science part of it too, but like you said, it's a little dry and it doesn't really tell you too much about the experience. And also like that woo-woo stuff. Like I guess you kind of know a lot about this psychedelic communities. Is there a lot of like delusional people out there and charlatans out there that are just kind of like maybe even sometimes they say like they have superpowers almost? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of dabbled in quite a few of these different areas, everything from the kind of like the online forums through to going on some of these like residential retreats where you're in South America for a few weeks, and so there'll be a group of you of total strangers at some point, and you will get everyone from sort of ex-military people with like PTSD who are looking to sort of resolve horrific sort of things that they've seen, through to just absolute sort of people who are way out there who are tinfoil hat reading corn circles kind of stuff. And so yeah, you get this real spectrum of people, and I think some of these voices, I think as with any kind of community, whether it's like political community is another good example of it, the weirder voices tend to get amplified. And so that's what I was trying to do. I'm trying to sort of like be this kind of middle ground where it's like, okay, I get what you're saying about these transcendent experiences because I've just had the same thing, but I've got to be able to take that experience and do something useful with it. If I'm just stood there staring at the wall thinking that the wallpaper's talking to me about God, then that's a useless experience in my opinion. I've got to be able to do something with it here. And same likewise with the science. The science is very good at telling you about like the biology and the chemistry of things, but what does that tell me about my human experience? And so this is what I'm trying to do, is just boil it down to something I can use. But on these retreats and these psychedelic communities, yeah, you get everybody. So, and they come from all kind of walks of life. So you will get the people like you described who will take what they get from these experiences and just apply it literally. So if they have seen themselves as God or as the Messiah or a superhuman, they will think, well, yeah, I'm God. I'm superhuman. I've got superpowers. I can, I'm actually, you're imaginary. I'm just imagining you. You are a manifestation of my imagination. And yeah, I don't find that kind of viewpoint particularly useful at all. So yeah, you get some very strange characters. I've come across, shaman who claim they can fly. People who will say they can sort of cure any disease, or people who say they can cure cancer or things like this. I'm very wary of those kind of claims. I do think there is great potential in these substances, particularly for like psychological trauma, like the PTSD situation I mentioned before. But I don't believe that the magic and magical bullets that cure cancer and sort of allow people to fly through the air.
Yeah, and I think if there's too much of that magical bliss, I think it kind of turns off a lot of people who would actually probably be be very helped with taking these kind of psychedelics as medicine almost, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of my kind of bugbears with it is that the effects of these things are amazing. I mean, just in themselves, they are amazing. You can have an experience which is amazing. So, like, do we really need to say it, like, will cure cancer or something? It's kind of almost putting a kind of a juvenile expectation on it that it can do anything, and those kind of claims will fall over. If someone says they can fly when they drink ayahuasca, and you say, well, okay, let's see this, then you just start making the community look silly, and it starts taking away from the actual potential within ayahuasca, or any other psychedelic, which I think is limitless, really.
Yeah, and yeah, well, actually, one thing I want to add to that too is taking these substances. I noticed, because I've been doing ayahuasca maybe about 5, 6 years, and I think when I first started, it was amazing experiences that did help me in my life, but it did kind of almost build my ego a little bit because I started kind of identifying with the guy who's done ayahuasca because I was the only guy in
Mm.
my friend group who did that. So you're kind of building this new ego around this new identity, and yeah, it took me a few years and a little bit more ayahuasca trips to kind of shed that part of me too. But there are kind of yeah, there are kind of like a little bit of a, maybe you can call it dangerous, whatever it is. But you take these substances, you can identify with stuff, and if you're identifying with being gone and stuff, I think there is some dangers there. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, there's definitely some traps there, in particular in that one, and it is such a tricky thing because when you have one of these experiences, particularly like very transcendent sort of ego death experiences, there is a tendency to sort of come back from it and start basically evangelizing about it or sort of raving about it, and then people, you don't realize necessarily how out there you are sounding with it. So in a almost in a quest to like improve yourself and make yourself sort of better and more open, you can very easily end up distancing yourself. So it's a very tricky balancing act between sort of this kind of exploration and self-improvement and just keeping your feet on the ground. And I think that's why it's important to have these voices of like boots on the ground. That these things can be amazing, but you've got to be able to integrate it back into something that this I can use within this instance of a human being. Because yeah, it's all very well thinking that you're God or whatever, but and again, and I don't necessarily disagree with those kind of concepts entirely. There's something in there about that we are all one, we are all sort of the universe experiencing itself and all that, which is a very beautiful concept. But if that just sort of equals that you end up feeling disconnected from your loved ones, or just staring into space, or not looking after yourself and sort of neglecting your human experience, then it's not served any purpose, in my opinion. You've really got to bring it back. And I've had the same kind of struggles as what you're talking about, where it's because I mean it's just fantastic. I mean you have one of these experiences, you're like, what do I do with this? It's like, how do I talk? And now I've just been talking with like a pantheon of gods, and now I've got to go to work on Monday. Like, what? so, so it is tricky. But yeah, I'm quite lucky in that. My wife and my sort of immediate family are all like very sort of on the same page in terms of stuff that I do. So there's never really been any kind of like secrets in our family what I do, and that's really allowed me to sort of talk about it and keep things, boots on the ground.
Yeah, I know. That will help out a ton. And you actually, I did watch a video of yours on YouTube, and I hope everyone checks out your channel, man, because it's a great one. I love what you're doing. I did watch this one video, and I think you were talking about one of the how you can almost increase perception, and it's like maybe this is like a smarter way to talk about psychedelics, is like almost expanding awareness, expanding perception, but to be able to just observe your own inner experiences more, like your inner processes. Meditation does the same thing. It's just a lot longer of a process to do that. But Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, is this like a healthier way to talk about psychedelics, and like, how can we talk about actually like increasing our awareness to like actually be more aware of our inner processes?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that we're. It's not just a psychedelic topic. I just think we're very bad as a civilization about talking about uh, these kind of states. Even these kind of what is it that makes us happy? What are our sort of psychological goals? Am I okay right now? Just we talk about like there being like a bit of a mental health crisis, and that's certainly one aspect of it. But I just think we're just not very good at um, yeah, just I don't know. I'm struggling to find the words for it. Just kind of like talk about what our experience as a human being is. I think
Hmm.
that's the kind of gist of it. And I think psychedelics are a sort of a part of that picture. I think are certainly like an antidote to that picture, because you can just have this experience which completely takes you out of yourself, and that's so useful in this day and age. I mean, I work a sort of a 9 to 5 job, so I end up with the same kind of like, come Friday, I've got the same kind of bullshit on my shoulders as everybody else, and you're like, oh, just totally in your funk.
Hmm.
And to be able to have an experience which just snaps you out of that, and like just reminds you of the awesomeness of life and the awesomeness of being a person,
Hmm.
it's crazy valuable. And I think you can get that same kind of thing through. I think meditation is also like a super useful tool. Um, but yeah, I think this is the kind of the golden age thing that we're in now, where that we're starting to talk about things like meditation and psychedelics without it being seen as like some kind of woo woo
Hmm.
bullshit. And granted, there is still an element of woo woo and sort of some weird practitioners of it, but the the evidence of the benefits is being taken more seriously now, and I think that's a super cool thing of the time that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And like you said, like we have, like I think we do have a little bit of a trouble talking about our own human experiences, and like that's one of the reasons like literature and art, and like especially like sometimes when you go back centuries, you can see like how some people talk about it so much more vividly than you ever hear people in modern day talk about like how humans experience life, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like if I if I went into work tomorrow and they said, and you had the sort of, the chit chat kind of thing. It says, oh, do you have a good evening? If I was said, yeah, I went out and, I got drunk with some friends, they'd like go, yeah, well done. If I came back and said, yeah, I heard this amazing piece of poetry, and let me just read you a line of this poem, and let me see if people would be looking at me like I'd lost my mind, and why that's like a perfectly, if I start that scene that was so, it really spoke to me, and the colors are so rich and stuff. Again, that conversation just doesn't go across on, apart with like, you obviously with your inner circle of friends and family it would work, but just in society at large it doesn't work for some reason. And I think this is one of the things where when I've been in like places like South America, where their culture gets it right, because there you can say to somebody at like 9 o'clock in the morning, like, how are you doing? You go, yeah, man, I had this crazy transcendent experience last night on ayahuasca. And they go, oh wow, you tell me about it, like, and it's just baked into the culture there, so
Yeah.
where you can start talking about these kind of concepts without people thinking you've lost your marbles.
No, and that's actually kind of a reason why, like, going down to South America and actually being at a retreat and being in the jungle for like a week or two, like, it's such a nice
Mm.
reset because yeah, you start losing so much of the like programming like the Western culture kind of has in your head, and like,
Yeah.
just yeah, you start finding a lot of different aspects of yourself that were just kind of hidden and like are more real, and like you said, it's just more of experiencing life, and yeah, that is amazing. Can I ask you then, like, how did you get into this work? Like, what, like, motivated you to start the YouTube channel? And like, what was your experience with psychedelics before that?
Yeah, good question, mate. So there's the long version and the short. So the long version date goes back like sort of 25 plus years. So I first got into psychedelics when I was a teenager in Manchester, and it was just part of the scene there. When I was a teenager in the 90s, the sort of the rave scene was just exploding around England at the time. So let sort of, the dance music scene was coming out. And so, yeah, there was a lot of LSD and MDMA on the scene. And it was just a dumb thing at the time. That's so even as a sort of a teenager, I was taking LSD and MDMA, but not in the same way. I didn't realize the same potential in it that I came in later life. And then later on, when I was in like my late 30s, I relocated from England into sort of mainland Europe. And I started having just really sort of crippling anxiety attacks from nowhere. I was always like quite a confident person, so I thought. And then suddenly I was having trouble leaving the house even on some days. So I have epilepsy, and that was my sort of panic attacks were beginning to trigger my epilepsy. So this was a really bad combination for me. It's like going into my 40s in a strange country where I didn't speak the language at all at this point.
Oh, wow.
And so I started looking for alternative ways of sort of being able to resolve this, because I didn't want to really particularly go down the pharmaceutical route. I didn't want to, changing medications is always sort of tricky, so I didn't really want to go down that route. So we did a bit of snooping around online, and that brought us to finding out about DMT. And so, cut a long story short, I managed to get hold of some DMT, and pretty much overnight, my anxiety levels just dropped. I mean, I went from being absolutely convinced I was going to die to kind of, I had this DMT experience whereby I was kind of shown it's just don't worry about it. This is, I mean, the literal words it said to me was, listen, you came in through that door and you're going to go out through that door, and it's all okay. Just don't worry about it. And this sounds like ridiculously simple, but it completely rewired my brain into how I felt about death. And so I stopped being neurotic about death, which I was like losing my mind over it. And that my anxiety just dropped. So my epilepsy just went back into check, and I was a functioning human being again within about an hour or two. So I was like, holy shit, and obviously, and included in all that, I'd had this just bonkers transcendent experience of like distant galaxies and the universal consciousness sort of talking to me, and when all the sort of the hype around something like DMT of like, you're talking to aliens or entities and they're there, it completely ticked every box. So I was like, right, okay, I have got to get to the bottom of this. I've got to try and see what's going on here. And so I kind of, from that kind of 5 minutes of smoked DMT, that's what brought me in the direction of ayahuasca. And then just from there, I've really come to appreciate that there's a lot of, I got to the bottom of what was bringing about all this anxiety in the first place. And basically, I was having some kind of like midlife crisis, but brought on by stuff from my childhood. But I don't think I could have mined that out without these psychedelics. It really sort of like shone a spotlight on things I didn't actually realise there. Just pause for a second there, mate. I'm just going to open this window a bit because the light's getting a bit funny in here. So 1 second. Hopefully. It's a bit better. Actually, might be a bit too much. That was kind of what the progression, the path that I went down, and that's what kind of brought me to it. See, so then it was when I went on to one of these ayahuasca retreats, because I wanted to have a longer time within this experience to be able to explore it a bit more fully. And it was when you come out of one of these retreats, they give you some tips on things to do to sort of help you maintain what you've learned on this retreat. Mm-hmm. And one of them was have a creative outlet, have something whereby you sort of, a project that you can work on and create. So I'd taken all these pictures of this retreat, and I had an opinion on whether this retreat was good or bad. I thought it was good. As I thought, okay, I'll make some review videos of this retreat, and I'd been on a few other retreats as well. Some which I thought were not quite as good. So I thought, right, I'll make a few review videos and I'll put them out there. And so that's really how the channel started. And I got sort of a bit of feedback there. And then I just carried on making videos, really talking about my experiences. And yeah, I got more of a positive response than what I ever thought I'd get, to be honest. So it's turned out okay.
Nice. All right. Well, that's actually a great way to start it off. A very like an organic way of just like, hey, like let me make some
Hmm.
review videos, and now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, like now you're like making some just like really, really deep videos that are very well done.
Oh, thanks, man.
I just wanna mention one video that I loved from yours as well. So I think this was like maybe just a month ago for you, but you took 5 grams of mushrooms, and yeah, you shared like an experience which I guess most people would call a bad trip, but you were explaining how like maybe this isn't like you shouldn't be seeing this as a bad trip, where like you had intense emotions of like abandonment and like loneliness
Hmm.
just come up to your consciousness,
Yeah.
and you had to go through that. Do you maybe want to like just tell my like viewers, just give a little drop into like what this experience was like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I'll have to give a bit of sort of backstory to it, and it does sound a little bit morbid, but I assure you, I view all this through a kind of positive light. And so the anxiety issues that I was talking about earlier, and it was related to stuff from my childhood. It was basically my mother committed suicide when I was very young, and this was something I'd kind of I basically had to sort of like choke down and sort of build my life back around, just to sort of to get through sort of being a kid and to being an adult. And when I sort of came to approaching like 40, this all just came tumbling down and led to this anxiety I was talking about. So when had been doing these retreats in Peru, I knew what I was facing. I knew that there was I was potentially, this was not going to be sunshine and rainbows. That at some point I was going to have to face this kind of shadow of my mother's suicide. And yeah, sure enough, a few of those kind of occasions came up in Peru, and you kind of, particularly with ayahuasca, you learn quickly that you get what you need, not necessarily what you want, and
Yeah.
that can often be a very ayahuasca is notorious for sometimes being a very difficult experience, like almost hellish sometimes, and I'd certainly had those experiences. So then, yeah, so when I did this mushroom trip about a month ago now, uh, mushrooms for me had always been very fun, very sort of cosmic, sort of like a lot more. There's definitely some kind of mischief there, but never really it's gone off on this dark tangent. But yeah, when I took this dose of mushrooms, and it just these kind of like emotional firewalls that I'd had in place to sort of between me as an adult and me as this child who just lost its mother just came tumbling down, and I was just hit with like a fire hydrant of raw emotion just in my face. And yeah, like I was feeling like abandonment, loneliness, like the anger of a child. Like, have you ever seen like a child just go bananas in the supermarket? It's just on the floor and just smashing its hands and like rah, 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 and the parents are just like what do I do with this kid? Like, and everyone's looking, and or so that kind of anger from a child having a tantrum that was coming out at me. And similarly, like if you ever seen like a kid like get lost or something, like if you're on a beach and you see a kid who's lost its like parents, and they just kind of slump down and they just kind of like defeated and they don't know what to do because they've not quite got the framework in place to like ask strangers like, can you help me find my mom and stuff. Just all this kind of stuff was hitting me, and I was completely unprepared for it. But even though it was possibly one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life to be feeling all this, it I view it as an immensely positive experience because I needed this. You can sort of imagine, like if someone's very emotionally blocked and very, they've been sort of keeping them stuff stewed up in themselves for a while. And you see this on movies all the time. You just get to a point where people just go, "Rah!" And you recognize that in a movie as somebody just having that release that they need to release. It's an emotional outburst.
Yeah.
And that's what this was for me. It was all that emotion from a 4-year-old kid who didn't have the knowledge or the framework or anything to be able to do this, just bottled up for like 38 years, and then here I am at 42, and it just poured out, and it like amplified through the ages, and it was intense. And also, but man, in the morning, I just felt amazing. Like it was like it was just a true burden lifted off my shoulders. And yeah, I think it's possibly one of those things where it's maybe you need to have done psychedelics to appreciate it, because it might sound like a bit of a crazy thing to say, but I think perhaps one way to frame it where like people who hadn't used psychedelics to understand it would be like with like soldiers and PTSD. Everyone can appreciate that a soldier is going, experienced all this kind of horror of war, and they come back sort of shell shocked, and if they could just like get it out, then they could go back to being normal again. But they can't. They've lost that faculty to get it out, and I think that's what happened to me as a kid. I just, what do I do with this? Like, where's my mother? Where's the person I want to give love to? Where's the person who's going to look after me? Like, and there's nothing you could really say to that kid apart from, dude, you got to just get through this, or at least maybe these days there's a bit more a better structure point. But back in the 70s when I was growing up, it was like, yeah, dude, pull your socks up and get on with it.
Yeah.
So
No, that's like honestly, I think that's a lot of our culture, especially for men, is like holding your emotions. So when you have like a traumatic event happen and you don't have that emotional outlet, it just keeps building, and like it can lead to just so many like just rough, it's just not good for you. It can lead to like, I don't know, maybe possibly illness, or maybe possible like just mentally just not being fit. Like it seems like a big problem. So you did like, so you said you got rid of all this emotion, and like did you notice like now that you're over a month like past it, like did you notice like, are you like maybe more in touch with your emotions? Are you your ability to like let go of your emotions, all that stuff? Have you seen a change in it at all?
I would say, honestly, no, because I don't. I think this was like the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
The way I'm sort of viewing this, it was a window that I was looking through to this thing. I think there's a lot more there for me to do. I mean, obviously, it's a very the loss of a parent is a very kind of complex thing. I wouldn't expect that to be sort of solved in kind of one night. So I am expecting that this is going to be something that crops up again in future experiences, and I'm not going to shy away from that. I don't want to give the impression that I'm kind of masochistic and that I'm going looking for this these kind of painful experiences. I'd much rather have
The nice one.
the exploding galaxies and nebulas and all that sort of stuff. But I sort of I recognize that it's something that I need to do, because I think one of the main things that's bothered me within my kind of adult life is I've recognized this kind of emotional blockage, and it's come up particularly like if I have like a family member who's passed away, say like my grandmother or something like that. I absolutely love my grandmother. She looked after me when my mother died, and then when she passed away, I couldn't do anything. And I felt like I owed her some kind of emotional outpouring, And same even at some kind of like joyous events where I've been at like christenings for like nieces and nephews, and I'm just so emotionally blocked that I think it's going to take a while to chip through all that. I don't think that's going to realistically happen in one night. So I'm looking forward to sort of doing some more work there, and I'm hoping that at some point I'll be able to sort of connect more with that part of myself, and because it does. I think it can make you feel quite alien, quite distant from people when you don't have that sort of emotional connection with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's. I've probably got a few more rough nights ahead, to be honest, I think.
Yeah, hey man, I can understand that, and like you said, the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes, like I bet like with your experience, you're gonna have to kind of get through a couple more of those. But so when you're going through a bad trip like that, when you were like, did you like resist it at all? When like, are you kind of like, because I know like whenever I have bad feelings, like I know that, or like those bad trips, I know a part of me is like, hey, like don't resist, because I know that's what you're kind of taught, like in a psychedelic way. Let the emotion come up, observe the emotion, try not to like, like try to attach it to it mentally at all. Like, were you resisting, or how did it get go with you?
I would say that one I wasn't. I've certainly I've had to learn that lesson the hard way. That one, it was kind of it was there's always a little bit of anxiety when you're coming up on these kind of experiences, or maybe a little bit of discomfort, particularly with something like ayahuasca. You can get this quite heavy body load,
Hmm.
but it passes and sort of it moves on. And this one, it wasn't passing, it was escalating. And so yeah, I kind of remembered the stuff I'd learned, like what you just talked about, like yeah, just let it happen. Just perhaps this is what needs to happen. Don't fight it, because I've had some experiences in the past, particularly some when I was with ayahuasca, where I have fought it tooth and claw,
Ha ha
and
ha ha
it
ha.
just made the night into an absolute nightmare. I've had some of the worst nights of my life just from yeah trying to, because I'm such a control freak as well. That's my thing. So I'll be sitting like doing this like ridiculous heavy breathing, like like curled up all fetal, like sort of
Ha
doing
ha ha
anything to
ha.
try and
Push it
stay,
away, yeah.
yeah, and just made the night awful. So yeah, it's a tricky thing to learn, this kind of act of surrender.
Hmm.
I think I've certainly managed it the other night, but it took some doing to teach me. But it's a tough. I remember when people, when there's someone who comes to you and says, "Can you give me any advice for psychedelics?" and you say, "Yeah, just surrender, go with it." You're like,
Ha ha
what does
ha.
that mean? How would you?
Yeah. No, I bet that's like it's a tough piece of advice, because like even that whole act of surrendering, it's like the same with meditation. It's like they say an act of acceptance, like whatever comes up, whatever thought, just accept it. Like you can't really conceptualize that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't. It's more of an spiritual or experiential knowledge to like be able to be like, oh, okay, so this is surrendering, this is acceptance, kind of thing. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can understand that being tough and like, oh, yeah, I've been down that resisting mode, man. When you're in a bad trip and like you just like you're trying to push that pain or whatever's coming up away, and it's not good. That's why like whenever psych people ask me advice for psychedelics, I just say focus on your breath. Like before you go in there, do some like mindful breathing. Like the best thing if it's going into a rough spot is try to bring your attention back to your breath. And like that's my only advice, because like I said, yeah, surrender. It's a tough thing to tell somebody because they're gonna completely lose that when they're in a bad trip.
Yeah. What I always say to people is that if you're going to do psychedelics, particularly these like really strong ones like ayahuasca or high dose of mushrooms, then you've got to make an agreement with yourself, and that is you're either in for the best night of your life, the worst night of your life, something in between, or nothing at all. And if you can't make peace with all four of those outcomes, don't do it. So you can't, if you could just go into it just looking for the best night, yeah, that might not be what's going to happen. So you make sure that you fully accept, like, because I've had nights where I've drank sort of like many cups of ayahuasca and been completely sober, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh,
So
really?
you just have to be sometimes like prepared just for whatever happens. This is it, and I just accept the experience for what it is.
Hmm.
And I'm going to trust in myself, and I'm going to trust in the medicine, and yeah, let's see where this goes.
Hmm. No, that's pretty impressive. So now you've done like so a lot of ayahuasca, I guess, and like some mushroom experiences like with high doses. So like for me, my mushroom experiences have always been like maybe 2.5 grams, 3 grams. Go into the forest with my friends and just have like a nice, a nice time in nature. And like I like those, but I think it's like a completely different scenery when you or different experience when you do 5 grams and stay at home and like actually like really see where it takes you, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So when you do take those doses of mushrooms, like, and then you take like, can you compare that to ayahuasca? Is there comparables? Like, I know it's hard to describe the experiences, but do you notice any differences at all or similarities?
Yeah, I think the parallels become kind of quite obvious. There's a characteristic to these kind of tryptamine spaces of DMT through sort of ayahuasca through um, psilocybin. And what I've certainly found with since since having these like very high doses is that it makes subsequent experiences, first of all, seem easier to get into that kind of space, and also that the parallels become much more apparent. So the mushroom trip I just talked about, if someone had told me actually you didn't take mushrooms, you actually just took ayahuasca, I would have believed them. It was so similar to that kind of ayahuasca headspace of, yeah, you need to experience this. And I said previous to that, sort of mushrooms had always been kind of quite cheeky, quite sci-fi, quite cosmic sort of thing. And so this was a completely different ball game to what I was used to. And I do attribute that to the kind of the work I'd done with ayahuasca in the meantime, is that it had kind of, I don't know, maybe put me in a different headspace or a different set of expectations. But the parallels between them are sort of very similar. It all, this kind of like DMT world, I'd say goes across all these different medicines, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So I still haven't done DMT, so I guess that's on my list for one day.
It's bananas, mate. Absolutely bananas.
And honestly, you're the first person though I've heard who tried DMT and came back with more of like a therapeutic benefit to it, where like you said, you came back and it really, your anxiety was like lessened quite a bit. I've never heard that take from people who do DMT. It just seems like a crazy, amazing experience they have that lasts only 10 minutes because it's such a concentrated thing. And then it seems like it's something that like a lot of people have trouble like taking anything from it.
Yeah, I think that the thing, what I found with DMT, it's very, you certainly do, the stories that you hear about the kind of like, the roller coaster being very quick are certainly true. But you do have these very cosmic experiences. It's what the way I kind of sliced it up is that, something like ayahuasca is very earthy and you feel very connected to nature and very sort of grounded, very here. DMT is very sort of out there, and it's almost like the story of the universe. It's kind of very sort of cosmic. Again, there's these sort of alien archetypes appear, and they really do appear. You do really get this X-Files alien type stuff going on. It's bananas. But I think the thing for me was it just painted this picture of the universe is bigger than Rob freaking out. Rob freaking out is just a tiny little part of this beautiful, immense tapestry, which is going to go on when Rob is dust. So, dude, just don't worry about it. And it was almost done as like a throwaway comment to me, like this: come in through that door, you're going to go through that door. Don't worry about it, dude. But for me, it was just a life changer. And I think this is one of the cool things with like this. It's always, for me anyway, it's always these very simple statements that mean the most. It's like, it's like you see yourself and you say, like, dude, I love you. I love myself. It's like, thanks, man. I really needed to hear that. It's such a simple thing. It's not necessarily people giving you the secrets of the galaxy. It's these simple things like, wow, I should spend more time with my friends. I should try and be the best parent that I can be. I should stop letting all this stuff weigh me down. It's very simple, and that's the beauty within these things, I think, is it just cuts through the bullshit of like, work sucks over. I wish I had a better car, all these, and it's like, wow, just the fucking trees are amazing.
Oh, it is true. Actually, like my first ayahuasca retreat, that was like that simple thing was kind of one of the things that like really gave a profound change in my life, and it was just me realizing like, wow, I'm so fucking lucky. Like, I'm just really lucky. Like, I have so many, like, people in my life that help me, blah, blah, blah. But it was just like, I'm a lucky person. Like, so many other people have, like, such harder lives than me, and I'm never grateful. And it was just like, that was just a complete change in my perspective to, like, be more grateful in life. And it changed just how I live my life ever since then. And that's one thing now whenever I do ayahuasca, a lot of times that gratefulness kind of keeps coming back up and deepening and like it's I fucking love it.
yeah, same, mate. I think the gratitude that comes in, I think that is really one of the beautiful things. So when you can have all these, experiences, but usually when as it's kind of the night's winding down, I just as you described, just immense feelings of gratitude, thank you for this gift of life, and thank you to my wife, and thanks to my kids, and thank you to these people who let me experience their culture as I flew around the world on a metal tube. This is amazing. This is such a gift. So I think that gratitude is part of this thing, which when I talk about it, really can help ground us and just sort of be useful to remember that gratitude as part of our sort of human experience.
Hell yeah. All right. So, yes, I've been doing this podcast for a little while now, and so I do promote a lot of psychedelics on here. I've talked about my ayahuasca experiences a bunch, and I talk to people like you who are promoting psychedelics in different ways. And one thing though that you did that I haven't done yet is like you kind of like gave a little bit of a warning that like if you are going on these like ayahuasca retreats or any kind of psychedelic retreats, like it's not all good. Like there are some people who are like actual charlatans, and you did an amazing video on this this ayahuasca retreat called Inner Mastery. I guess they're pretty big over in Europe, and you almost called them a cult for the most part, right? So I was just like, this is something I never talked about because I do like. I do say like I promote ayahuasca on my show, on my podcast a lot, but I never really tell people like be careful. So I think it's something I really want to bring up. Like, so maybe you can give my audience a little insight into like what you found out with Inner Mastery, and maybe give them an idea of like a smart way to go about finding an ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah, sure. So Inner Mastery are sort of an organization based in Europe, and they've gone by like a sort of quite a lot of different names. They used to call themselves Ayahuasca International, then they changed it to Ayahuasca English and School of Ayahuasca, and they keep changing the sort of name, and it's because they've got this very bad reputation. But I didn't know this at first. It was one of the first retreats that me and my wife went on. So we signed up for one of their retreats in Europe, and we went down there, did a weekend, we did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies, and we got there, and it's kind of like the sort of franchise fast food of ayahuasca. They're just recruiting sort of very well-meaning but quite sort of naive and inexperienced sort of people who want to work with ayahuasca, and they'll say, right, okay, here go and set up a workshop, and we'll send you some ayahuasca, and you just get as many people as you can into this retreat, and just see what happens basically. So we got there. It was very poorly organized. There was like 40 of us in one room. I think there was like 3 facilitators. They were handing out, it was kind of absolutely wall to wall. They didn't have sort of like fixed buckets for people to throw up in. They've given out people like freezer bags, which was just bags of puke. So yeah, I kind of did the retreat. Also, when it came to like the group sharing aspect, they tried some very sketchy techniques on my wife, which I didn't appreciate at the time. They sort of wanted her to sit sort of legs akimbo and talking about basically talking about how she'd had sexual abuse as a child while she sat there with like legs akimbo, and we were kind of didn't know what to make of all this. There's a lot of like sort of group pressure to go along with it. It was a very weird atmosphere.
The other thing, group pressure,
yeah. So we came out of it, and I just basically I did one of my review videos. I said, didn't like it for all these reasons, but that's that. I'm a disgruntled customer. I'm not going back. Don't recommend. And out of all my videos, that was the one that first really started taking off, and people were just getting in touch with me from all over the place saying, I've had an even worse experience, and I was people talking about being like sexually abused on these retreats, and people talking about being just like given ridiculous, dangerous combinations of substances. And it just kind of escalated over time, where so many people were getting in touch with me that I thought I felt obligated to give these people a voice, because there was something going on there, and some of these stories were so horrific that I thought, okay, I don't want to be the person who's bitching about some company that I didn't particularly have a good experience with. But I couldn't not say anything about some of these things. They were, some of these stories were absolutely terrible. So it ended up with, I had people who were like, for sort of whistleblowers from within the organization getting in touch with me, talking about how like them and the partners have been gone through a sort of disconnection policy, very similar to what you hear about Scientology, with like sort of couples being split up and families being sort of separated, because you basically, you're joining this place. It's a job, but it's also kind of like a way of life, and they get you to sort of work for the organization. So again, a lot of parallels to Scientology there. You basically, it really does become sort of like a cult mentality. They want, you're working for them from like eight in the morning till sort of like, 3 o'clock in the morning, so like doing administration during the day, then running these retreats at night, not getting paid for it. I say they can, you're at the whims of the sort of the leadership. Just absolutely, yeah, just really bizarre stories, like I say. And I mean, yeah, I thought, okay, this is something that I need to put this information out there so people don't make the same mistake that I made. And yeah, so I've made a few videos about them. I think they're a very strange organization. They got some weird ideas around like promoting themselves. Like they just recently did a video, where the sort of the spiritual leader of Inner Mastery proclaimed that he created coronavirus and it was all him. And granted, he's doing like an analogy, but it's just a weird video. So yeah, it's one thing I've kind of done a bit on my channel, is just kind of calling out these kind of what I consider to be bullshit. Just putting the information out there as it's reported to me. So when things like with Inner Mastery being a cult, that's how the ex-members are describing it to me. So I've got guys who work there. They come to me and say, yeah, this is a cult. They're asking us for like complete obedience. They're sort of getting us, high on ayahuasca. There's sexual abuse going on in there. They're trying to split us up. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna voice that for them. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of sort of what advice I would give to people to sort of how to pick places, it's tricky. And I want to try and be balanced here, because on the one hand, the last thing I want to do is try and paint sort of like the ayahuasca community, or like all the shamans, like this is some kind of like ultra predatory thing to be wary of. But as with anything, yeah. But there are some bad actors out there. Same with anything. I think the same with you could go to a psychiatrist and you could get the best psychiatrist in the world, or you could get Hannibal Lecter. It's so yeah. I honestly, I think the best advice I can give when choosing these retreats is just look online. There's sites called Aya Advisors, or I think, I can't remember what the other one's called, but I think Aya Advisors is the best one, where people are giving like very sort of Yelp-like reviews of retreats they've been on, and you can sort of very easily filter them by which are the sort of the good places and which are the bad places. And that was one of the things that I did when I was picking my retreats, particularly in South America. I thought, okay, if I'm going to go all this distance and I'm going to invest all this money and sort of, then yeah, I'm going to pick like one of the most popular centers. I'll pick the one that seems to align most with me, with what I want to do. But I certainly, I think there is a definite safety in just going with what's popular, I would say. Yeah, and that's. It's tricky. It's tricky because then people worry about it being an authentic experience, and whether is that then just sort of some Westerner who set up a retreat and sort of is sort of capitalizing on these things. Quite possibly, but it's a good way of finding your feet. And then if you want to sort of learn Spanish or sort of go deeper into the jungle, then I would say that's something you do on subsequent retreats. But the first time, particularly going to something like South America, go with what's been tried and tested by other people.
Yeah. And if you do like one thing that I did when I was starting down, like I always knew somebody who went to that retreat before. I got lucky in that sense, so like I know that's not going to be the same thing for everybody, but if you do know somebody, you can go and find these places. And I went to a little bit of smaller places, but like yeah, you find like a lot of these shamans, like if you get a good shaman or and good guides, like these are people who are just they just understand the medicine very well, and they just want to make you feel safe and guide you through the journey. And that's like if you get like somebody like that. And the other thing I would add into that is like 40 people, that's way too many people for a sitting, in my opinion. Like, I've done them 20 max, and that's usually with like 3 or 4 facilitators for 20 people. So if people are saying like there's going to be 40 people, I've even heard it up to 80 people out for once like retreat, or just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that seems just foolish, in my opinion.
Yeah, apparently there's different styles of retreats. I have heard of a style of what they do in, I think it's Brazil, where they have like, I've got some friends who go on these retreats where it's like 100 people, big outdoor sort of dancing around bonfires all night, and it's sort of it's a lot more kind of happy clappy sounding, but there's a lot of dancing. The ayahuasca is you drink, I think, about like 7 cups, but it's a lot weaker. But it's a kind of like so I
Oh,
think there are different
yeah, that would
different
be a
sort of
different, yeah.
yeah, there's different ways of doing ceremony. I've got to say that doesn't sound like my cup of tea at all. I'm much more. I like a small group. I've been on groups where it's just been like 4 people, and that was perfect. But the most I've been on is like, well, apart from the inner master thing where there was 40 of us, but I've been on ones where there was like 25, and that was yeah, getting a little bit on the big scale.
Hmm.
I would say I would for me personally, just I think the sweet spot is I would say like maximum 16ish. But yeah, I fully appreciate that there are different styles of ceremony where they have different things, and I think as long as the people who are running it can run those numbers and they are prepared for those numbers. It's not just that they're trying to ram people in to make money. It's that's what they've prepared for, and they've got the facilitators there for it and the facilities there for it. You know, enough bathrooms and stuff. I think that's fine, but I think just sticking as many people as possible into one room, yeah, obviously that's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, true. All right, man. We're coming close to the end here, so I have to ask the question. It's the name of the podcast. So, Rob, God yay or nay?
Well, I'm going to have to put a lot of caveats in here, mate, but I would have to say overall, yay. Not what I would have said 10 years ago, but I would put some kind of caveats in there, and that I would say, you know, God, I don't tend to think of it. I certainly don't think of it in the kind of classical religious sense. I'm
Hmm.
thinking of like God as, you know, this kind of there is a higher power, or there is something, you know, that I aspire to, something that I want to have, that I want to sort of guide myself to. And you could call that, you know, I could call that my goals, I could call it my objectives, I could call it God. So you know, the thing which I want to be aligned towards, the thing which sort of the best version of me possible, that sort of spirit of humanity, that you know, the sort of the thing which gives me sort of hope for the future. If we could, you could call that God. Again, it's not the classical God, so I would have to say, yay.
All right. That sounds pretty awesome. All right. So, before we end, so what do you think your next psychedelic you're gonna try is, and how long you think you're gonna wait?
Yeah, it's probably going to be this weekend, and
Oh, nice.
I'm probably going to try with the mushrooms again, and see where that goes.
Are you gonna do a big? Are you gonna do like 5 grams? You think?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't do 5 grams because I'm particularly trying to do anything like super heroic. It just happens to be that's my kind of dose, and that's actually a source of frustration for me. I'd much rather be able to get those kind of effects off lower amounts. But yeah, five grams for me is just the amount that gets me deep enough to do what I want to do. So yeah, I got probably at least 5 grams.
Oh shit, man. All right, buddy. Well, thank you so much. So, guys, check out Rob's YouTube channel, Adeptus Psychonautica, and I'll put that in the bio so everyone can click through. And please subscribe, check out his videos. Anything else you want to promote or anything else you want to say?
No, mate. I just say it's been awesome talking. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Hey, buddy, let's do it again someday in the future.
Yeah, man, definitely.